Oh, tell me when to go. Hello, Business Today, India Today studios at the World Economic Forum at Davos. He's been known as the vaccine man of India, who came to the rescue of millions of people at the time of the COVID pandemic. He's recently pivoted into the world of Bollywood, taking up a 50% stake in Dharma Productions. And to talk about what's happening both in the field of medicine as well as what's happening with the film world, we're joined here at the Davos studios by Adar Poonawalla of Serum Institute. Adar, welcome. You've had a bit of a hiatus from the media for a while, so it's great to have you back. Last we were speaking about vaccines. I want to start by talking about your acquisition of 50% stake in Karan Johar's Dharma production. How is that coming along, and why did the vaccine man decide to get into the world of films?
Nice to talk to you after a long time. You know, films have always touched everyone in one way or another from time as far back as we can remember. When this unique opportunity came to, partner with one of the most iconic brands and production houses, it was very interesting. Of course, I'm not looking to, make huge financial returns in this business, although we're talking about scaling it up in different verticals, building different verticals in music and distribution and other things to build Dharma and take it to another level of being a powerhouse. But it has a soft power. It can open so many doors, gives you access to so many other things, both internationally and in India. So I thought it was an interesting strategic move. And in the world of media and films, this is the first foray and investment from our group, and we'll see whether we can bolt on other things also.
So what kind of films are you looking to make? What's your cinematic vision?
Well, I'd like to make some good films, but of course to keep a production house going, you have to make those what we call commercial films that do well also. But that doesn't mean you can't have your pick of making some really, really good films. So
what's
I don't want to talk too much about it.
But tell me,
right
what's
now,
a good film according to you?
I mean, there's so many good films,
Like, how would you define a film that the new Dharma Productions would like to make?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say the new Dharma Productions. Karan is a visionary, and he has all the creative film visions, where I'm not going to interfere much in that. But I'll tell you, there are films like Gangu Bhai, where Alia had starred and had that very dramatic and important role. There's so many stories that can be told, which can activate, people on the right causes or bring certain things to light. There are one or two releases next year which I can't really talk about, but you'll see what I mean when you see those films. Of course, nothing to do with me coming in. This is what Karan does best, and he's known for of course, his romantic and dramatic films also, and some of these films that hopefully can make a difference and bring certain things to light.
So you were competing with the likes of the Ambanis, the Goenkas. How did you manage to outmaneuver and outflank them?
I don't compete with any groups. In fact, when I hear about any other group interested in something, I back away, because I firstly am quite friendly to a lot of these people, and I don't like to get into any conflicts. So this wasn't something that I was aware of or in the know. This just came about, and we just did a very quick deal, and it all worked out quite smoothly.
Because the world of vaccines is very different, in terms of being more predictable, more certain. It has a certain path and pace.
Of course.
Bollywood is very different. The cinema ka, Bollywood walon ka chaska lag gaya aapko?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been friendly with a lot of the fraternity for a long time. I'll tell you how my experience goes in a few years' time. We've just done it. So let's see in a few years, and I can share some of my experiences then on how things are going along and more of our plans to scale things up and build different verticals there.
So what comes next? An IPL team?
No. I think there's enough distractions here. I want to stay focused on my core business at Serum. We've got a huge pipeline that I've been working on after COVID. A lot of the diseases spread by mosquitoes. You've got dengue, chikungunya, yellow fever, vaccines coming about. We've made some partnerships for that. I'm expanding, of course, and scaling up our lending business at Poonawalla FinCorp with a brand new team, partly from HDFC and other institutions. It's a fully professionally run business now, and we're hoping to grow at 35-40% annually, and we've already got an AUM of around 30,000 crores at the moment. But we want to focus more on secured lending, given the situation right now in India with unsecured lending and the directives from the RBI, generally speaking, on how one should manage these things. So we've got these core areas that I want to focus on.
Let's spend some time talking about how you think artificial intelligence could potentially impact healthcare and specifically vaccines, because there's so much buzz around AI, and I wonder how you're trying to apply AI and its potential to the world of vaccines.
Well, there's a AI theme also at Davos this year, and we've set up some interesting meetings with some pioneers in AI. It's still a bit early, and it's very expensive already right now if you look at the valuations in terms of investing. But in terms of working to develop and save time and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in clinical trials and development of new molecules, AI has a substantial role and a huge potential that we're looking to exploit, whereby imagine if you could figure out the combination of the antigens and the vaccine and do your trials in a year or two instead of 5 or 6 years. You can imagine the saving to the pharmaceutical industry and the lives saved as a result. The only challenge here is, and this is what I think needs to be addressed, is that some of the top regulators in the world, US FDA, Europe, UK, and the WHO, will have to take a stand on what they think is legitimate. So if an AI tool, if a quantum computer predicts that this is what works, and you do a trial or a limited version of a trial using AI, is that something validatable? Is that something that a regulator will approve? Otherwise, it's a waste of time. You can use all the AI. If it's not going to be approved by a regulator, then you don't have a green light on a vaccine that can be
so
licensed.
When I travel,
so that's what will have. If that happens, then it's going to be great.
I traveled to Pune when the COVID pandemic had hit to see the facility that you'd built up. That was one of the biggest vaccine facilities in the world. How much of that capacity are you being able to bring to use?
Well, after the pandemic abruptly sort of stopped at the end of 2021, in terms of, which was great, of course, for the world. In terms
but it's
of
bad for business.
No, not really. In fact, the pandemic created a lot of disruption and delays on our pipeline of vaccines. Had it not been for the pandemic, we would have had a lot of these vaccines churning out, because at that time we had to rejig all the plants to have so much Covishield capacity. So I would say about 50% of that capacity is still idle. But over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be filled up with these vaccines that I talked about, including our HPV vaccine, which is very important for girls and women in India to protect them from cervical cancer. So it's got huge potential to save lives and prevent cervical cancer in women, both globally and in India. So that's been launched. Government will probably start taking it as this year goes along, and then we'll export it end of next year.
So, we were researching for a recent cover story by Business Today on weight loss drugs. And I was looking at the companies that are working. I was wondering, why isn't Mr. Poonawalla doing something in this space? It seems to be the hottest space in medical science right now.
Well, very soon it's going to be overly crowded. So I don't want to get into something where there's going to be 10, 15 people jumping in. We like to invest in projects and vaccines and drugs where there's a long-term horizon on your investment, because there's a lot of effort you put in to get a drug qualified and licensed and approved and trained manpower and capex and all of that. And if in 3-4 years time there's a huge price erosion due to competition when drugs go off patent, then that doesn't make sense for us. So our business model that way is a little different and a little more sustainable from that angle. However, having said that, we're working on patch technologies, which is an alternative delivery system instead of the needles and injections, which are painful. And in campaigns where you want to vaccinate large populations, the patch can be administered by a non-healthcare professional. So anyone.
So what progress have you made so far?
It's going on. The trials are yet to be completed, and once that's done in around 2 or 3 years' time, you could have some of these vaccines, including some of these drugs which we may make with the patch, which is very easy to use.
There's a fascinating debate taking place over how many hours one needs to work in the workplace, and what happens if you stay back Sunday, and whether your wife likes to stare at you or you like to stare at your wife. You jumped into that debate with the L&T CEO.
Well, it wasn't pointed at anyone. There was so much chatter on Sunday morning, and I looked at my phone, so I just gave my my sort of view in lighter vein. But I think the point there is that, these chaps feel that hard work is very important. There's no debate, there's no substitute for hard work. But of course, you need to have a social life and balance your life so that you come back refreshed to work, so you're productive. You need to meet people to raise funds. You need to meet government officials. You need to do so many things. So you can't just be, Monday to Sunday, just be in the office working. So I just think that's a bit impractical. And
so if L&T Subramanian is working 90 hours, Adar Poonawalla is working how many hours in the week?
Well, I would say I work at least 8 hours a day, sometimes on weekends if it's needed. But there may be some days where, I may be just on the slope skiing or doing something else. But it all depends on the day. I could have a 16-hour day also. During COVID, I was coming home at 11 p.m. at night. So it all depends on the journey and stage that you're at. So if you're an entrepreneur building your business, you absolutely should work hard and do whatever it takes. But, after that, it's the quality of work, working smart, working strategically is what, at the senior level that
But
matters.
I think the argument that Narayan Murthy and Subramaniam are trying to make is that at this stage in India's economic cycle, if everybody becomes too comfortable, starts worrying too much about weekends and work-life balance, then we don't have the same kind of productivity and income lift that China did.
No, but who's ever said that, the quality of work or the technology that you could change the world, as someone said, in a matter of a few hours with a good idea or a breakthrough on a technology. I'm not saying there's a substitute for hard work. We work on Saturdays also. Our production is 8 hours shifts, 2 shifts a day, sometimes 3 shifts a day. But, a human being can't be productive beyond 8 or 9 hours. Sometimes you have to put in those hours, it's fine. I do it, my staff do it, but you can't do that every day. You can't be a hamster on a wheel, where you don't get a chance to think and reflect on your decisions or what you're doing or where you want to be in life. So you need time for that. And I don't think they meant also literally working, 365, 400 days a week, 400 days a year. I think they just meant that you have to work hard, and there's no substitute for hard work. So there's no debate on that.
There's a lot of conversation.
I agree with that completely.
There's a lot of conversation with government about the need for private industry to invest more in the India story. How do you look at that? This critique that despite the cut in corporate taxes, India Inc. hasn't quite invested in the India story the way the government would have liked.
Well, I mean, look, it depends sector to sector. I can talk about my sector and my perspective. Apart from, our vaccine industry doesn't need breaks. We don't need incentives. All we need is to be left alone to price our products fairly. So I'm talking about not removing price controls, but relaxing price controls. And let me put that in perspective. Everyone says, and I insist, I'm the leader in giving affordable healthcare to everyone all over the world. But what's happening today is that the vaccine industry doesn't have enough capital from its profits, and I'm talking about an industry, my company included, to be able to invest, to make our own breakthroughs, to make our own vaccines, to make our own Covishield or our own chikungunya vaccine. These take hundreds of millions of dollars for each vaccine to be developed in terms of research and trials. So, whether it's in government tenders, whether it's in the private market, that needs to be relooked at. I think if that happens...
So relaxation to what extent over current price?
I'll give you an example now. If you're talking about a vaccine that's being sold at 100 or 200 rupees, and if someone wants to sell it at 300 or 400 rupees, I'm not talking about thousands of rupees or lakhs of rupees. What are we talking? We're selling vaccines at less than a price of a roadside shoe. You can get a chappal for more than the vaccines that were being sold at. And what's happening is that arbitrarily, without discussion with the industry, the MRPs are being reduced. Forget being increased, they're being reduced. So then one begs the question that if we're talking about Make in India, and we're all for it, look at all the industries that are flourishing. Your IT industry, they make 1 billion per quarter. My industry doesn't make 1 billion in the year. And I'm not isolating and just talking about IT industry. You take auto industry, you take finance industry, all the companies are flourishing. India is a great environment Modi ji has created and his government. I think in some areas they need to relook at relaxing certain regulation and these kind of price relaxations, and that will give a huge boost. We don't want handouts, we don't want tax breaks, we don't want any other incentives because I don't think that's a sustainable model, and the private sector has to invest on its own and grow. But these are things that can, in my opinion, help.
The critique against that would be that these are generic off-patent vaccines that you are manufacturing, and the whole reason behind that is that somebody else has done the R&D and
not necessarily,
and the others are basically producing what was developed and researched internationally. So what the government's critique would be, why should you get to make a killing in terms of profits?
Absolutely correct. So let me answer that in two parts. There are some vaccines that have been developed here, so they're innovated here. They should have no price controls at all and have a 10-year window or something like you have globally. We don't have that. It's not, that you can just sell it at any price. What am I talking about? Even if someone else has made the vaccine, you have imported the technology and you're making the product in India. We're talking about reasonable price controls. I never said remove price controls. I'm saying reasonable price controls in conjunction and discussion with the industry, right? We have a Vaccine Manufacturers Association. Never once have we been called. I think that's where we can work together with the government, or we'll just stay where we are and we won't be able to develop and invest. How much can we invest? How many jobs can we create if we don't have the profits to replow? If you want to be the Pfizers and GSKs and you want to create those kind of entities in India, you gotta give them the opportunity to do it. Look at what's happening in the US. These are $100 billion, $200 billion companies, all of them. We're struggling to cross 1 billion.
You're the most valuable privately held company, I read.
Those are just valuations. I don't think if we went public we'd be valued at that, because you need to be able to grow every year. With this kind of thing, we grow at 5-10%. Sometimes we don't grow at all, till a new vaccine is launched. We're not probably suited at this stage right now. If we were listed, we'd probably hold a valuation, but it wouldn't give you the kind of investors probably wouldn't get those.
Is listing something that's on the cards?
Not really. I think when I have a more robust pipeline and I have multiple revenue streams, we may consider that way down 5-10 years down the line. But right now, what does one do with a listing? You just get then restricted, and you have to then have these quarterly performances that you have to chase, and with price controls you can't list a vaccine company. How would I grow? Even if my volumes go and the margin is 10-15%, the investors would question why you would be getting a valuation or a multiple of 30, 40, 50 or whatever these biotech companies are supposed to get. So I think if the government and industry can work together, there's a huge opportunity to really make this industry also flourish, like the banking sector, the financial sector, the IT sector, so many other sectors, auto sector, that are doing well. There's no restrictions there. Why are you putting a restriction here?
Well, you've listed some thoughts. It'll be interesting to see how policymakers respond to that. For taking our time and joining us at Davos, thank you very much, Mr.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to Business Today Television. You're